Welcome to Lead Well, Live Whole. I'm your host, Michael Sirmon. Every episode, we'll spend a few minutes exploring the challenges, questions, and realities of everyday life, because success means little if you lose yourself in the process. So take a breath, settle in, and let's spend a few minutes exploring life together. Have you ever looked around at your life and thought, I should feel happier than I do? Maybe your career is going well, your family's healthy, you have a roof over your head. You've accomplished goals that your younger self only dreamt of. Yet, somewhere inside, something feels off. Not broken, not tragic, just misaligned. You wake up each morning, do what needs to be done, check another box, solve another problem, and keep moving. But every once in a while, usually when the house gets quiet, a question rises to the surface. Why do I feel lost? If you've ever asked that question, this episode is for you. Welcome back to Lead Well, Live Whole. I'm Michael Sirmon. Every week we explore practical ideas to help you think clearly, lead confidently, and live whole. Today we're talking about something many people experience, but very few admit. We often confuse direction with motion. I think that's one of the greatest deceptions in life. When we start to believe that movement equals progress. I used to joke in the office about, that change is what we do to give the impression of progress. And we always talk about companies that way, but it also happens to us as individuals. We stay busy, our calendars are full, our inbox is actually never empty. People are depending on us, and from the outside, everything looks very successful. But motion isn't the same as direction. You can spend years climbing a ladder only to discover it was leaning against the wrong wall. I've coached leaders and just people in general who were making more money, who were more successful, who had more things than they ever imagined. People respected them. Their businesses were growing, their homes seemed to be thriving. But behind closed doors, they would admit, I don't even know who I am anymore. And that's not failure, it's simply drift. And we've talked about this before. Drift rarely happens overnight. You don't wake up lost, right? No one gets up one morning completely disconnected from themselves. It's usually the result of 1,000 small decisions. We say yes when our heart wants to say no. We carry responsibilities that aren't ours. We become who everyone else needs us to be, and eventually we stop asking what matters to us. And one day we realize that we've been living a life that fits but doesn't really fit me. That's one reason that, I've spent this entire season talking about clarity. Because clarity isn't just about making better decisions, it's about remembering who is making them. We often think that success can answer our identity questions. And many of us secretly believe that if I can just reach the next milestone, I'll finally feel settled. I've been there, I know. Right? The promotion, the retirement, the bigger house, the degree, the recognition, the next achievement. But the problem is success answers performance. It never answers identity. Success can tell us what we've done, but it can't tell us who we are. And when identity depends on achievement, peace always stays one accomplishment away. And sometimes feeling lost is actually an invitation. Right? That's a thought that kind of changed my perspective. Maybe feeling lost isn't evidence that you're failing. Maybe it's evidence that your soul is trying to get your attention. Think of it like a GPS. It only recalculates when you've left the original route, right? It doesn't shame you. It simply says, let's find another way. Unless you're my GPS. My GPS randomly just spurts out, why do I even bother? But you know what? Perhaps this season of uncertainty isn't punishment like it feels. Maybe it's an invitation to slow down, to listen, to ask better questions. And the questions aren't, what should I accomplish next, but what kind of person am I becoming? Who am I to my family? Who am I to my friends? Who am I to myself? There are three questions that are worth asking, right? And whenever I feel disconnected, I come back to these simple three questions. The first question is, what have I been chasing, right? Not what have I been doing, but what have I been chasing? Is it approval, security, recognition, control? Right? Sometimes the thing we're pursuing most isn't what we truly value. I go back to the why of what we're doing. That's the first question that I ask anybody that I'm coaching when they're talking about their schedule. Why are you doing that? Why are you in your role? Why are you, going after whatever this particular goal is? Because the why exposes the underlying foundation, and the right why will energize you. The wrong why, may get to the goal, but it's empty when you arrive. Second, whose voice has been shaping my decisions? We talked about borrowed voices a few weeks ago. Are you living according to expectations or convictions? And they produce two very different lives. Third, and this is one of my favorites, what gives me peace? You notice I didn't say what gives me comfort, but peace. And they're different, right? Comfort often avoids growth. Peace often accompanies obedience. And faith actually does change the conversation. One of my favorite verses comes from Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your path straight. You notice that it doesn't say what it doesn't say, right? It doesn't promise that you'll always know the whole plan. It only promises direction, not complete visibility. We often want God to hand us the entire map, but instead, he usually gives us just enough light for the next faithful step. And maybe that's exactly what we need. I've talked about this before. He cannot show me the full path because I'm going to look for shortcuts, because my goal is to get to the goal. God's goal is to deepen my relationship with him and myself and those around me on the journey. So in this season, right, it's important to remember that you're not starting over, right? If you're feeling lost today, I want to encourage you with this thought, right? You're not starting from scratch. You're starting from experience. Everything that you've lived through, all the victories, all the mistakes, the disappointments, the unexpected turns, they've all been teaching you. And sometimes clarity doesn't come from finding something new. Sometimes it comes from remembering what you've known all along. Right? I don't exactly remember the book and chapter, but I remember growing up, I always heard, in church, people would quote from the Bible and they would say, seek the old paths, right? Seek out the old paths. Find those things that work. Find those things where you were on solid footing, right? And grow from there, right? I love work. I love experimenting, because I know that if I get to that solid foundation, then I can try 10, 15, however many different things from there. And if they fail, I just come back to that last reset point. And then I try something different, come back to that last reset point, right? So what if for this week, instead of asking, what should I do next? You ask yourself, what needs to be aligned with what I'm doing? Right? Is it a conversation that you've been avoiding? Is it a commitment that you've been looking past? Is it a relationship that needs healed? Is it one habit that needs to be brought under control? Is it one belief? One belief. You don't have to redesign your entire life. Sometimes changing direction begins with just that single honest step. And if you take that step and find, hey, that's probably not what I should have done, then just take that one step back to your reset point, back to that solid foundation. I know that often when you're on that path, the path feels lonely. Often that path feels like maybe you've taken the wrong turn, right? But what if you're really not alone, no matter how lonely it feels, because I know that God is there with me, and I know His Spirit is there with me, and I know that there are people that are coming in alignment around me. But when I get so lost in what I'm feeling or lost in what I think I'm not seeing, then I can lose sight of that, right? What if that breakthrough is just around that next bend, just over that next hill? That's why I tell people that the destination isn't a static point, right? Or is it a set point? Because when I reach the top of this hill, which is my goal, what that will allow me to see then is the next hill or the next valley or the next whatever it may be, right? So it's a journey that has no ending point. Even when you retire, it doesn't stop, because we don't stop. And as long as we're breathing, we know that God has a purpose for us. As long as we're breathing, we know there is a purpose for us. And as long as we seek that purpose, submit to that purpose, then that loneliness can't control us. That sense of being lost can't dominate our thoughts, can't dominate our emotions. So if today's conversation resonated with you, I would encourage you to share it with someone who's been carrying that quiet feeling of being lost, even while everything on the outside looks okay. And if you're enjoying Lead Well, Live Whole, I'd love for you to subscribe, follow the podcast, leave a review, and share it with someone who could use a little more clarity in their life. And if you want to dig deeper, you can follow Lead Well, Live Whole on LinkedIn or reach me at michaelsirmon.com, because that's why we're here, to help people think clearly, lead confidently, and live whole. Until next time, I'm Michael Sirmon. Take care and keep moving toward what matters most. If today's conversation raised a question you've been wrestling with, I'd love to help. I offer one-on-one coaching for individuals navigating pressure, transition, and important decisions. You can learn more at michaelsirmon.com.